Well, aloha. My name is Pastor Dennis. I'm excited to be with you guys again for another installment of the Mililani Minute. Today we are going to look at some of the I am statements, really the first of several of the I am statements that Jesus made. Our goal in sending these videos to you is to be an encouragement to you. We know that many of you are at home, not able to get out and about, and so we just want to send these kind of videos to you and hopefully to be an encouragement. But in the passage that we're at this installment, we see Jesus has just fed the 5,000, and he went on his way, and the next day the people met with him again and they began questioning him. And I want to read their question for you. So I'm in the Gospel of John, and it's going to be starting in verse 30. So they said to him, "Then what sign do you do that we may see and believe you? What work do you perform? Our fathers ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Now that's an interesting statement because they want to know how they can trust him. Their fathers ate manna that came from heaven. They want to know what sign he does, what work he's doing. Now keep in mind, these are the people that just watched him feed those 5,000. These are people who just ate their fill of bread. And notice what Jesus says to them. He says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the true bread from heaven. For that bread of God is he who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." Now it's interesting because he looks at them and says, that wasn't Moses that gave you that bread. That was my Father. That bread came from heaven. That bread came down and it sustained you for a short period of time. That bread was made available to you not by Moses, not by your fathers, not by your ancestors, but by my Father. And it came from heaven. But then notice the very next thing he says, that they say to him in verse 34. They said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." What bread is it? The true bread that comes from heaven. That's the bread they wanted. And they said, "Sir, give us this bread." Notice what he says. Continuing, Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst." Now this is an incredible statement. When Jesus says this to them, he's saying, first off, that bread that you're talking about, that manna that you're talking about, it wasn't Moses, it was my Father. And secondly, that bread is bread that lasts forever. The bread that comes from heaven is the true bread that will last forever. And it's not just bread, but I am that bread. Now what does he mean? I am the bread of life. When he says, "I am the bread of life, whoever comes to me shall not hunger." Why do we eat bread? Right now, we're all quarantined. We've got bread. Hopefully you have bread. If not, call us and we'll try to get you some. But we're looking at these incredible times, and there's a lot of jokes going around about the food we're eating in the midst of quarantine. There's a lot of things like that. But in all seriousness, all jokes aside, we eat. Why? Because we need the nourishment. We need to be sustained. So we have this bread, we have this food, and we eat this food. But it doesn't last long. If you're like me, it doesn't last very long at all. And then you need to eat some more. Jesus is saying, I am offering you something. I am something that will never run out. I am offering you something that will sustain you forever. Now notice he says, "I am the bread of life." Okay, whoever eats of me will never hunger. Earlier in the Gospel of John, and then again later, he talks about how he offers water that they will never thirst again if they are to drink this water. So not only does Jesus sustain us spiritually in our hunger, in our thirst, Jesus is the sustainer. He's not just offering us something that sustains us, but he himself sustains us. So I want to ask you today, as you're gathering together and looking at different things, I encourage you to think, what are some ways you can realize his sustainment in your life right now? Have some conversations with your family, with your children, with your neighbors. Talk about this sustainment and this nourishment that can only come from Jesus. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.